Assalamualaikum students. Today we'll be discussing the third fat soluble vitamin, which is vitamin K. Now all vitamin K forms are the naphthoquinone derivatives. Naphthoquinone is a group of organic compounds that is structurally related to naphthalene. Vitamin K exists in several forms, and in plants it is found as phylloquinone. It is also known as vitamin K1. In intestinal bacterial flora it is found as menaquinone, which is known as vitamin K2. There is a synthetic form which is menadione, and then there is a hydroquinone form. We'll be discussing it later. Dietary sources. Now both vitamin K1 and K2 are mainly found in plants and synthesized by bacteria respectively. That means phylloquinone is found in plants and menaquinone is produced or synthesized by bacteria. Now vitamin K1 is present chiefly in green leafy vegetables such as alfalfa, spinach, cauliflower, cabbage, soya beans, tomatoes. Vitamin K2, also called menaquinone, is a product of metabolism of most bacteria, including the normal intestinal bacteria of us, most higher animal species. Okay, so your gut bacteria is also producing vitamin K2, that is menaquinone. The recommended dietary allowance: 120 milligram per day for adult males and 90 milligram for adult females. Intestinal absorption: it is absorbed from the small intestine in the presence of bile salts. Storage: it is not stored to any appreciable extent, thus it can also cross the placental barrier and is available to the fetus. Mechanism of action and function: both of the things are same for this. Now actually what happens, that vitamin K is required in the hepatic synthesis of blood clotting factors or proteins, which are factor 2, factor 7, factor 9 and factor 10. Now once they are synthesized, they are to be, it is important to activate these clotting factors. So formation of functional clotting factors requires the vitamin K dependent carboxylation of these factors. Okay. Now what happens is, these factors, factor 2, 7, 9 and 10, they have glutamic acid residues. Okay. So after this K dependent carboxylation, these glutamic acid residues are converted to gamma carboxyglutamate residues. Gamma carboxyglutamate residues. Thus, this carboxylation activates these clotting factors. The carboxylation requires gamma glutamyl carboxylase enzyme. It requires oxygen, carbon dioxide, and as I already told you, the hydroquinone form of vitamin K. This hydroquinone form of vitamin K during this process gets oxidized to an epoxide form. Okay. Vitamin K helps in the post-transcriptional modification of blood factors. As I told you, the post-transcriptional modification means the maturation of those and activation of blood factors. Vitamin K is first converted, this vitamin K is first converted to hydroquinone form in liver microsomes by an enzyme dehydrogenase using NADPH. Okay. Now then this vitamin K in the hydroquinone form functions as a coenzyme for this carboxylase enzyme. It uses carbon dioxide to be incorporated as an additional carboxylic acid group at the gamma carbon of a specific glutamate of these coagulation proteins. I'll show you the diagram and explain it to you in there also. Now, this converts the glutamate residues into gamma carboxyglutamate. See, this gamma carboxyglutamate plus carbon dioxide is converted into gamma carboxyglutamate. Okay, that means the attachment to the glutamyl residues and the carbon dioxide introduction is changing this into gamma carboxyglutamate and thus activating the clotting factors. Here the hydroquinone is converted, during this process this hydroquinone is converted into 2,3-epoxide. The enzyme used is carboxylase. Now, when in this process the hydroquinone is changed to 2,3-epoxide, we need to regenerate the quinone again. So, to regenerate the quinone, this 2,3-epoxide is reduced to quinone again by epoxide reductase. Okay. Dicumarol is found to inhibit epoxide reductase. So, if dicumarol is inhibiting epoxide reductase, you cannot regenerate the quinone and these clotting factors cannot be activated. Now, once I'll show you the diagram and then I'll come here. Okay, here. See, these are precursors of clotting factors 2, 7, 9 and 10. Okay. All of them have glutamyl residues. Okay. Now, these are not activated. Okay. To activate them, this glutamyl residues should be changed to gamma carboxyglutamyl residues. That means a carbon dioxide should be attached to it so that they can be converted into gamma carboxyglutamyl residues and can be activated. So, here the enzyme gamma glutamyl residues, by adding oxygen and carbon dioxide and with the help of vitamin K as a coenzyme, is changing this whole precursor thing to an activated mature clotting factor 2, 7, 9 and 10, and these mature clotting factors glutamyl residues are actually gamma carboxyglutamyl residues now. So, the whole thing is got matured by this reaction, by the carboxylation, and vitamin K is playing a role in the maturation as a coenzyme. This vitamin K, as I already told you, this vitamin K is in the hydroquinone form, which during this process is converted to 2,3-epoxide form, and this 2,3-epoxide form is again reduced by reductase to the hydroquinone form. Okay. This is the whole thing that was earlier discussed. Okay. Now, once, see, the glutamyl residues are good chelators of positively charged calcium ions because of their two adjacent negatively charged carboxylate groups. So, once they are matured, they have these carboxylate groups which are negatively charged and they will attract calcium towards it, and thus now they have positive charge. Now, this prothrombin, that is the clotting factor plus calcium complex, is able to bind to the negatively charged membrane phospholipids on the surface of damaged endothelium and platelets. That means, once the endothelium or platelet is damaged, this prothrombus calcium complex, which is now considered as a positive complex, is able to bind to the negatively charged membrane. Okay. Now, attachment to membrane increases the rate at which the proteolytical conversion of prothrombin to thrombin can occur. Okay. So, now the healing starts, and gamma carboxyglutamate residues are not only present here, they are also present in proteins other than those involved in forming a blood clot. This is a MCQ question that that is asked again and again. For example, osteocalcin of bone and protein C and S that is involved in limiting the formation of blood clots also undergo gamma carboxylation. Okay. So, this is what is happening once these precursors, okay, these are converted into gamma carboxyglutamate, they have this carboxylate groups. Okay. Now, calcium comes and gets attached to them, and this is positively attached calcium. Membrane phospholipid has negative charge, so when there is an injury, they will go there and they will get attached to the membrane phospholipid and do the healing. Okay. Now, if there is deficiency of vitamin K. Prolonged use of, how will it occur? Prolonged use of antibiotics and sulfa drugs. If you're using antibiotics for a long time, this will suppress the growth of vitamin K2, because see, when you are giving antibiotics, you are actually suppressing the bacteria, and these bacteria are supposed to make vitamin K2. Okay? So, once that bacteria is suppressed, vitamin K2 is not going to be produced. So, this will cause deficiency. Other than that, malabsorption, biliary tract obstruction, sprue, steatorrhea, these are fat malabsorption syndromes, and celiac disease. They can lead sometimes to vitamin K deficiency. Okay, because vitamin K needs fats to get absorbed in the body, right? So, if you have a malabsorption for fats and all, then it is not possible for vitamin K to get absorbed. Vitamin K, being a fat soluble vitamin, is absorbed with the help of bile salts. The biliary obstruction impairs the delivery of bile, hence vitamin K is not able to get absorbed. Short circuiting of the bowel, because of any thing that, I mean, like if you have an ulcer in the bowel, you have to get it resected by any chance. So, any surgery that causes short circuiting of the bowel, that may also foster deficiency or cause deficiency. Water soluble form of vitamin K is vitamin K3, which is used in these cases. Okay, there is a form which is water soluble, and definitely the synthetic form, and that is useful in such cases. In immediate postnatal infants, hypoprothrombinemia and bleeding in many tissues occurs in vitamin K deficiency. So, sometimes when the cord is cut due to vitamin K deficiency or due to hypoprothrombinemia, the child may start bleeding. Okay? So, this newborns, due to the sterile intestine, they have lack of bacteria in their intestine. So, vitamin K is not synthesized. So, if there is, the clotting factors are significantly low, they may result in hemorrhagic disease of newborn. The newborns may start bleeding from nose, bleeding from cord area, cord cut area, anyway. So, it is recommended that all newborns receive a single intramuscular dose of vitamin K as prophylaxis against hemorrhagic disease. Okay. Toxicity of vitamin K. Prolonged administration of large doses of synthetic vitamin K, which is menadione, can produce hemolytic anemia and jaundice in the infant due to its toxic effects on the membrane of RBCs. Therefore, it is no longer used to treat vitamin K deficiency. No upper limit has been set for vitamin K. See, here we have a scenario that a 72-year-old woman presents to your clinic for follow-up of her ulcerative colitis. That means her colon has all ulcers. She also suffers from diabetes, and she tells you that she recently had a foot ulcer which is being treated with broad spectrum antibiotics. Okay, she has lots of antibiotics, so this may have killed the bacteria, just coincided. On physical examination, you notice that she has several bruises on her arms and legs, which she attributes to clumsiness. She thinks that she might have hit something, and that's why she got a bruise. You order routine lab tests which reveal a prolonged PT, that is prothrombin and PTT. You suspect that these abnormal lab values are due to her current medical conditions, and they will likely be corrected rapidly with treatment. So, that means that she has some foot ulcer which is not healing. Okay. Then she is on broad spectrum antibiotics. It may have killed her bacteria, and there is no vitamin K production. Then she has all these bruises. That means she has this clotting problem. Okay. So, the whole thing reveals that this may be vitamin K deficiency. So, today we did the forms of vitamin K, we did the deficiency diseases, the sources, the mechanism of action and function, and tomorrow inshallah we will be doing vitamin E. Hopefully you understood this vitamin K. Thank you.